So let me introduce you to our first speaker today. So, how exciting would it be to travel to Bali, Easter Island, Fiji, Maldives, Seychelles? I think I've been to all of them except for two, but this is great. I think it would be awesome for many of us to explore the world and go to those exotic destinations, but it's quite challenging to get there on miles, and revenue tickets cost a lot. So our first presenter today is Dominik Żmuda, who is a blogger from traveling the world, and he has a company called Boundless Miles, who help travelers to maximize their points through a booking service. You will learn about a few of those things today. So without further ado, let's welcome Dominik on stage.
Hi everyone, like Boris said, thank you for introducing me, by the way. I'm Dominik. I have a blog on boarding area called Traveling the World, and I also have an award booking help service called Boundless Miles, and we help customers basically maximize their frequent flyer points and stretch them further than maybe you normally would be able to. So my talk today is about exotic destinations and how you can travel to them using basically miles at a very fraction of the cost of a revenue ticket, because revenue tickets like Fiji or Maldives can sometimes be very expensive, not to mention Easter Island, where there's only one airline that flies there. But you can definitely fly there on miles, and you can save a ton. So let's just jump right in. So gorgeous locations, I'll focus on 5 of them: Bali, Maldives, Mauritius, Fiji, and Easter Island today. But you can use this same strategy that I'll outline to basically fly anywhere or find connections to anywhere. So there are limited flights to some of these. Bali has the most flights, I think, of any exotic location, and then Easter Island probably has the fewest. Expensive revenue tickets due to limited flights to some of these destinations. There's sometimes decent award availability. You can find them even in business class or maybe first class. And sometimes it can be a challenge to book these awards, because normally to exotic locations, the partners of some of these airlines don't show up online, so you might have to use a partner airline's website and then call the airline's miles that you want to use and redeem over the phone. So the strategy for this is you kind of have to work backwards. So first you want to locate your destination, and then you want to go to that destination airport's Wikipedia page and see which airlines fly there. At least this is my strategy, and it works very well for me. So once you find the airlines that fly to that airport, for example, Bali, a ton of airlines fly there, you go to Bali's airport's Wikipedia page, and then you find those airlines. Then you can research what frequent flyer programs and what alliances are available to you with that airline. That, for example, Cathay Pacific or Cathay Dragon fly to Bali from Hong Kong. So you can use American Airlines miles or Alaska miles on Cathay Pacific. And then you start you work backwards from the destination, and then you kind of have to think about how you can get miles into that frequent flyer program. So for example, whether that's from American Express, RBC, whatever, any bank, or SPG, as we know, transfers to 40 different airlines. So for Canadians, frequent flyer programs that you can directly transfer into are as follows. United Airlines is not a program that Canadians can transfer into directly from a bank, but it's a very important frequent flyer program because you can search any Star Alliance airline online, and it works very well. So obviously we have Aeroplan from Amex, One World, American, Executive Club, Asia Miles, Alitalia, Delta, and then other airline frequent flyer programs. You have the Alaska Airlines Mileage Plan, Etihad, and obviously Starwood and Marriott. So like I mentioned, you can transfer directly from a bank card in Canada to all of these except for United Mileage Plus. So here are the ratios for American Express. Some of you are familiar with these. It's up to 30 minutes for Aeroplan and Delta. Usually it's instant, and the transfer ratios are 1-to-1 to those. And 1-to-1 to Aeroplan, 1-to-1 to Executive Club, 1-to-1 to Hilton, but we don't really pay attention to Hilton. Yeah, sorry. And the other ones, it's 5 business days. Most of the transfers for Amex USA are instant, but unfortunately in Canada it can take up to 5 business days. For the other ones are 3 business days. So for Starwood Preferred Guest, as we know, it transfers to more than 40 frequent flyer programs, which is excellent. With a combination of SPG and Marriott, there's even more available options for you now. And the current offers on the Canadian SPG American Express cards are $50K for the business card and for the personal card after you spend $1,500 in the first 3 months. So you can get $100K SPG points plus what you actually spend. So it's a really good offer. So I'm not going to read all of these, but these should be all of them. I pulled this from the Marriott and SPG website yesterday, so you can literally transfer to all of these, and 3 SPG/Marriott points is 1 mile, plus you have the bonus when you transfer. RBC is the next one on the list. You can transfer to American Advantage, British Airways Executive Club, and Cathay Pacific Asia Miles. The transfers can take up to 1 week. Sometimes, depending on what day of the week you transfer it, it can be quicker. And remember, with American Airlines, you can hold an award for 5 days. So you can call in, hold an award with Cathay Pacific First Class, for example, and then simply, once the points are there, call back to ticket it. But the transfer ratio is 10 RBC to 7 AA miles, unlike the other ones, so unfortunately. And only the RBC Avion card holders and eligible banking customers can transfer the points. Other cards, the TD Aeroplan credit cards that you have, and then of course the MBNA Alaska Airlines MasterCard that we have. So just to recap, it's Amex, RBC, TD, and the Alaska Airlines credit cards. Those are probably the best ones in Canada where you can use and utilize those various frequent flyer programs to fly to the exotic destinations. So let's start with Bali. So Bali, like I mentioned, is probably the easiest place to get to using miles because you can basically fly on Star Alliance, One World, SkyTeam, and other airlines, so you have access to a ton of frequent flyer miles and a ton of different airlines, and there's a lot of flights with these airlines to Bali. Since it's such a popular destination, there's a lot of award seats. And especially, I think my favorite way to get to Bali is fly from Singapore to Kuala Lumpur to Bali using Avios on Malaysia Airlines. I think it's a great deal. Or if you're in Hong Kong, you can redeem Avios, of course, on Cathay Pacific, which is also a great deal in my opinion. So just some random routes. With Star Alliance, to get to Bali, you can fly from Vancouver or Toronto to Taipei to Bali, just with 1 stop. That's on EVA. Or you can fly from Montreal or Toronto via Istanbul to Bali. That's a new route that will open up next year. So Turkish has a fantastic business class. So no YQ if using Aeroplan, which is great, and also EVA as well. Or you can take some more connections and fly to Asia first, and then, like for example, through Singapore or Bangkok. With One World, obviously Vancouver or Toronto to Hong Kong, and then to Bali. If you wanted to fly Qatar Airways first class, you could fly via Doha, but that's not going to be allowed on the American Airlines Award since they don't let you transit via a third region. So if you wanted to use Asia Miles or Avios, you could, but it won't be a great value. However, you could break it up and go to Doha for a few days, explore the Middle East, and then fly from Doha to Bali, for example. And then there's some more One World routes. SkyTeam, you can go via Amsterdam, and KLM has a flight to Bali via Singapore from Amsterdam, which is a very unique flight. The Amsterdam or the Singapore to Bali flight has lots of award availability since it's a really short flight. So you can redeem SkyTeam miles for it, Flying Blue miles for it, wherever you want. Obviously, you can also fly on the various China Southern, China Airlines, China Eastern via China, via Asia. And you can also fly with Korean Air. Other airlines, Emirates through Dubai, using Alaska miles, of course, or JAL if you wanted to. Then we have the Maldives. Lots of airlines also fly into the Maldives, but unlike with Bali, Maldives are a bit harder to get to because there's limited seats, since Maldives is a very attractive, especially during peak season, to travel to. So some sample routes again, you can fly via India, you can fly on Air Canada from Toronto to India and then to the Maldives, or you can fly Lufthansa or Austrian through Frankfurt or Vienna, or you could fly Turkish Airlines, which is a great option as there's no YQ, no fuel surcharges if using Aeroplan. If you wanted to do One World, you can fly via London. You may have to do a change of airport in London as British Airways. Most of the leisure routes are out of Gatwick, but you probably arrive into Heathrow. You can fly via Hong Kong, and you can fly via Doha. With SkyTeam, via Paris, via Seoul, and also via China on the various Chinese airlines. So using Delta, as we know, Delta is, an interesting frequent flyer program that has interesting rates sometimes. I think one time I saw Seattle to San Francisco for 250,000 miles in first class, which was obviously ridiculous. I don't know where they come up with those prices. But using Delta miles on their partner airlines is a really great deal, especially on China Airlines through Taipei on their excellent product. So that could be a great way to get to the Maldives, for example, if it shows up on delta.com, of course. Other ways, you can fly, you can use Alaska Airlines miles to fly on Condor to the Maldives from Frankfurt or Munich if you wanted to. You can fly Emirates or Etihad via Abu Dhabi or Dubai. And for Mauritius, again, a bit more limited, a bit even less flights than to the Maldives because there's less airlines and less seats. Most of these flights here, most of these airlines only operate flights once a day to some of these, to Mauritius. So with oneworld, we only have really one option, which is British Airways. Other airlines, I think the best way to fly to Mauritius, in my opinion, is going to be on Turkish Airlines. You can fly from Istanbul if you wanted to use it as on an Aeroplan award. Again, some sample routes, you can fly via Vienna from Toronto. And then with oneworld, you can fly via London, or British Airways has their South African operations within South Africa, so you could stop in Johannesburg for a few days and then redeem Avios to fly from Johannesburg to Mauritius, for example. With SkyTeam, you can go with Air France or KLM, and with other airlines via Dubai, on Emirates using Alaska miles. Fiji, as we can see here, we're getting down to the very, very limited, no oneworld options to Fiji. Air New Zealand, you probably won't find availability on, as we know Air New Zealand is very challenging, although you might in economy business, probably not. Oneworld, no options. Korean Air has great award availability to Fiji, believe it or not. So if you want to fly from Seoul to Nadi, Fiji, you can do so using Delta Miles. Or if you wanted to put that as part of a larger award, you could do that as well, fly from Canada or the US to Seoul and then to Fiji. That is an excellent use of Delta Miles, in my opinion. Or other airlines, Fiji Airways partners with American Airlines and Alaska Airlines. So if you have those miles, you can redeem them on Fiji Airways. Or if you're in Australia, you can do Virgin Australia. You can use Delta Miles on that as well. So Los Angeles to Sydney to Nadi, for example, using Delta Miles on Virgin Australia, which is also a great deal. So again, sample routes, you can fly one stop Vancouver, Auckland to Nadi if there's award availability on Air New Zealand, which if you get lucky, you can sometimes even find a business class seat if you're very flexible. My suggestion on how to find Star Alliance award availability is to use United.com. They have an excellent feature. They show all Star Alliance airlines, and they have a great calendar feature, and you can even mark if you wanted to do show only nonstop award availability, and it shows it very nicely on the calendar. And then if you wanted to if that doesn't have any award availability, you can fly via San Francisco or Los Angeles on United or Air New Zealand to Auckland and then to Nadi. A few more connections. No oneworld option, so we jump to SkyTeam. The only SkyTeam option is via Seoul on Korean. And then other airlines, you can fly on Fiji Airways or Virgin Australia. And we get to the most challenging one, I think. I tried booking a client one time to Easter Island. I think they said they have 3 months flexibility, and I think we needed 5 because LATAM is very, very stingy with Easter Island. So they only fly to 2 places from Easter Island, to Papeete, French Polynesia, and to Santiago de Chile. So American Airlines recently changed their rules, and now any flight to Easter Island will require a separate award, which means more miles. However, if you wanted to redeem Avios, if there's award availability, you can definitely do so from Papeete or Santiago. You just have to get to Santiago a few days before or include it as a part of a larger award. So Easter Island is a definitely exotic location, and there are award seats. You just have to be super flexible. And unfortunately, on British Airways, you kind of have to search date by date. There's no way to otherwise locate the award availability, someone to say very nicely, so it's kind of tedious, but there definitely are award seats. So just some strategies on how to search for award availability. What you want to do is you always want to search for each long haul segment individually. So for example, let's say I'm flying from Vancouver to Bali. And if I type in Vancouver to Bali, nothing comes up. On United.com it might, but Aeroplan search engine doesn't show that many options, so that connection might not show up on Aeroplan. So if you use United.com and you find award availability, generally you can just call Aeroplan and have them piece all those 3 segments together, and they'll price it out as one award if you're within the rules, and you're good to go. So you get better results if you search segment by segment, because let's say I'm only interested in flying EVA from Vancouver to Taipei and then continue my journey later through Singapore and then to Bali. So I might not see that connection if I just type in Vancouver to Bali, but if I break everything up individually, then I'll see those separate flights. I make note of them. I make sure that the layover times are okay, that that you're under 24-hour layovers, and you should be good to go. You can just call in and get those booked. So when you call a frequent flyer program like Aeroplan, for example, let's say I found availability from, again, let's do Vancouver to Bali on United's website, on EVA, and then Singapore. And if I search online on Aeroplan, I don't have that option. So you just call Aeroplan and you say, hey, I found a customer outing with award availability, and they can put it together. It might take a few phone calls because Aeroplan agents are sometimes hesitant to do that, but you can do it for sure. And you have to understand the rules and policies of each frequent flyer program. For example, Aeroplan has maximum permitted mileage, which you cannot fly more than X number of miles to a certain location, so you have to make sure you're within that. And you have to understand other rules like routing rules and which partners you can mix. For example, you can fly on Cathay Pacific using Aeroplan miles, only to a few select destinations, since Air Canada and Cathay Pacific partner in code share and things like that. So one of the advantages of breaking up your segments and your journeys is you can do something that's a 23-hour, 59-minute layover, which is great for exploring cities that you can basically see in a day. I've done this many times before. For example, I love to stop in Hong Kong for exactly 23 hours because then I can fly Vancouver to Hong Kong to Bali on the same ticket for the same amount of miles, but I can stop in Hong Kong for up to 23 hours, 59 minutes because it's part of a layover. So a stopover is 24 hours or more, but a layover is just a connection, and a layover does not require any additional miles, whereas a stopover does. So with some specific rules with frequent flyer programs easily accessible to Canadians, with Alaska Airlines miles, you can only mix Alaska and one partner airline. You can't redeem Alaska Airlines miles to fly American and then Cathay Pacific. It has to be Alaska and then Cathay. So basically, Alaska plus one partner or one partner only.